Arsenal are looking to complete their business this summer, but is there a spanner being thrown in the works? We're going to talk about that and more right after this. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much as always for tuning in. It is greatly appreciated. I hope you had a fantastic start to your week. I hope everything's going well. I hope you're doing good. Indeed, I hope you're looking forward to today's chat and conversation. Thank you so much as always for tuning in and joining me. It is indeed greatly appreciated. Good morning to Aidan, Blackshine, Stevie, Stuart. We've got Brian, we've got Steve, Matt G, Paul, Claire, Mark, Shari, we've got Anne and Amber Lee, we've got Tom and Arasilki, Tabani, Scouse Gooner, we've got Rich and Martin and Paul and Stephen and Carl, Norris and Tom and Christopher and Tizer and Logan, and plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat box as well. Thank you so much, all of you, as always, for listening, for tuning in. And if you could drop a like before you go any further, it really does help us out. So please do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We hit 63,000 subs yesterday, which is great. Thank you so much. It's always great to see kind of the number gradually grow, this channel grow, the community that we've got here continue to grow in, what I feel is the right way always. It's nuts to see this family continues to grow the way it does. And thank you. Thank you again. Right, let's jump, shall we? Straight into today's stories. We need to start with this spanner that is being reportedly thrown in the works. Arsenal's deal for Martin Zubimendi. Is there a more frustrating kind of scenario? Arsenal's deal for Zubimendi has been in the works for many months. And Arsenal fans have been subjected, of course, to plenty of frustrations with this deal, mainly because it's just been going on for so long. We've had the Real Madrid presence. We've had suggestions, of course, that other clubs might come in for him. We've had now these quotes that have come out that have started somewhat of a panic amongst Arsenal supporters. I'll be honest, like the quotes that we got that came out yesterday, you all would have seen them, that would have been emerged from social media, where basically Zubimendi turned around and said, it's going to be a long summer, anything can happen, type of things. These are very kind of generic quotes. He was asked specifically about Real Madrid, asked specifically about Xabi Alonso, so he gave specific answers about those things. He also gave answers surrounding the reported medical that he was set to take. Now, I spoke to you on the channel a couple of days ago before these quotes came out, and I told you that I was told reports of a medical were somewhat premature and were jumping the gun a little bit. And I think you can now see why we said as much regarding that medical report, that it was a little bit too soon to be coming out. Now, he will have to undergo a medical, of course, before he joins Arsenal. But as of right now, this deal is not in a state of panic. This deal is not in a state of falling apart, and people need to calm down. I understand that everyone's on edge about all transfers this summer. It's really is, a very, very kind of confident position that Arsenal are in regarding the deal for Zubimendi. And the only reason really why it's taking time is because of this July accounts scenario, where it's beneficial for both clubs to do the deal in July and have this deal show up on their books for the next accounting year for the respective clubs. Arsenal returned to pre-season training on July 7th, is my understanding. And so, therefore, even if Arsenal wait until the start of July to do this deal or confirm this deal, with Zubimendi's mind still certainly very much on the Isle of Arsenal, he can still join up with the first day of training. He can still integrate from the earliest point possible. It's not a deal that needs to be confirmed in June, but it might just mean that you're going to get some rather mad stories coming out between now and the end of this month. But just try to keep your feet on the floor. Try to stay calm. Try not to lose your heads on social media. It's really not worth it. But yeah, there's the Zubimendi quotes kind of addressed, and you just need to chill. You really do. On to Viktor Gyokeres, and a little bit of news on him yesterday. Announcement from the Swedish national side that he will not be taking part in their upcoming games against Hungary and Algeria. He has suffered something of an injury issue and has had to pull out of the squad. Now, make of that, of course, what you will. I imagine that even if there was a very minor issue with Gyokeres, that he wouldn't want to take any risks ahead of what is expected to be, a summer exit from Sporting this summer, a major transfer to a new club during this window. If he was to get injured during this international break that we have at the end of the season, then of course it could put any potential deal in jeopardy. So if he's suffering with any minor issue, it does make sense for him not to play. And not to get involved in any kind of the increasing of that risk associated with playing as well. So I don't think it's one of those injuries where you'll be sitting there going, oh, look, he's injured. He's got a bit of an injury issue. No, I don't think it's like that. I think it's minor. I think it's precautionary. And I think he's just being very, very careful indeed. But we know that he's not the number one, it doesn't feel like anyway. Certainly that's not the sense that we're getting for Arsenal, but Arsenal still are on this case and are interested in the Swede. But it is Benjamin Sesko, who Arsenal, of course, are leading the race for right now. Sky Germany reporting yesterday that Arsenal remain the main team, perhaps even the only team in concrete talks. And I think, of course, Arsenal's advancement on this front and the work that's gone into this deal in seasons prior, of course, has kind of staved off interest at this point from other clubs. I think other clubs are very much well aware that Arsenal are very keen on Sesko and leading this race and are willing to go quite far and pay a very reasonable price tag for Sesko. And that has, I think, staved off potentially a bidding war with other sides, because they know if they were to go in with a bidding war with Arsenal, that they'd be paying a hell of a lot of money to try and win the race for Sesko. And I think Arsenal's position in this potential deal for Sesko, of course, is a very strong and advantageous one. But talks ongoing, decisions, of course, still need to be made, and deals still need to be agreed on all sides. But it still remains a deal that Arsenal are, of course, discussing. And I imagine, I'm just going to give you pre-warning, this is going to be kind of the theme of course, discussions and transfer shows that you're going to watch. When you do transfer shows every single day, updates around particular players and how these negotiations are going, how the talks are going on, of course, it doesn't mean that from one day to the next, there is going to be a major update on these players. I know I'm being the worst marketeer for my own channel here, but I just want to be honest with you. Like, I can give you indications or the latest or what's being talked about and suggested, but these things take time. Discussions take time, and plenty of reasons are existing as to why these things can drag on a little bit. Arsenal want to bet the best price possible. They obviously want to be able to do broader business in the market as well, and always want to be aware of potential opportunities that come up elsewhere at the same time. Players, of course, are away on international duty or on holidays, which, of course, can have logistical interruptions with these types of deals at times. But yes, just be aware that you don't need to start losing your mind. I've seen such, in fact, I retweeted, if you haven't, if you don't follow me on X, you can find me at Tom Canton Media. But I did quote tweet a fantastic video. The video was put up by a Twitter account called Trip. I don't know if it is Trip who is the person who's done the video, but it's of a video, it's of an Arsenal fan basically explaining the rocket science to try and calm down Arsenal Twitter. I recommend you go and give that a watch. It's very, very good. It's very, very good indeed. So go and give that a watch if you have a chance. It is on my X Twitter page. I'm not sure if it's on Blue Sky. If it is, send the tweet my way, and I'll also retweet or repost it over there as well. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions and more right after this. Right, this is part 2 of today's show, where, of course, we jump into the chat box and tackle some of your questions, some of your thoughts, some of your feelings. So now is the time to do that. So if you've got any, use that capital Q, and I'll do my absolute best to answer as many of them as feasibly possible. So he says, Tom, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that we see a pre-recorded show with you and Anthony discussing transfers? It would be a good show to watch while you're in Canada. What do you say, Anthony? Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know if we can afford that level of pessimism on the channel. I'm not sure we need it. We need to be upbeat and positive. We don't want to bring the mood down. I'm only messing with you, Anthony. Ollie says, is it even possible to finalize a transfer when a player is on international duty? Yeah, it is. It is possible. You can do it, but it does require special dispensation from the national team and permission. Can't talk this morning. Permission from them to get that deal through. But it may be that they are blocked from doing that. It could be that they are told, no, you have to complete international duty before, of course, you can do any personal formalities outside of that. So it could be to the discretion of the national side. Lucas says, big up, Tom, for all the news. Hope you enjoy your summer break. Can you imagine what happens with Dan Potts if we sign Sesko? I can't say I've been tuning into Dan's stuff but I haven't had the time to tune into anybody, to be fair. But I know he's a Gyokeres boy, so I imagine he's very hard on the Gyokeres front. It's mad to think we could be sad or annoyed about Arsenal spending so much money on a top centre forward, isn't it? Always even says, honestly, I'm not feeling this Andrea Berta. Why? Why? What on earth has happened for you to feel that way at this point in the window? Ticking Time Bomb says, do you know what Gooner means in US slang? If not, I think you should Google it. I don't think I should. So Ralph says, Tom, does it mean that we won't do any business in June? Everything will be expected in July? Not necessarily, no. Obviously, with this Zubimendi deal, it's more of a kind of a both clubs would prefer the deal to be done, I think, in July. More so, I think, La Real than Arsenal. But it's not to say that we won't do any business confirmed, but it may be that things get delayed to the start of July. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Zella Lemadi says, Tom, what's your best starting 11 for next year with the additions? I think it would go Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Luis Skelly, Zubimendi, Rice, Odegaard, Saka, Sesko, Barcola. That's what I would go for. It's a bit of a dream addition, though, Barcola, of course. If not, it's still Eze, maybe. But he's not really a winger, but he can play in the wide left position. Jay says, have you heard anything about our mystery German? Not yet. Still a mystery. Lynn says, there shouldn't be an excuse this summer because we haven't got Edu in charge. We have Berta, who's a top sporting director. I absolutely agree. There is really no excuses this summer. Arsenal have to get a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 window, in my view, before the window closes. Claire says, how is it on transfer deadline day? Everything can get done in an hour, but the rest of the time it takes months. Because of the willingness of both clubs, the willingness of players, the desperation of clubs to do deals. There is so many mind games, negotiations, back and forth. Like, we're going to step away from it. We're going to chill on this. We're going to put this on ice, this deal on ice, because we're going to look at other potential options because you're not doing the deal that we want to do at this point. We're going to play the waiting game. It's all about negotiations, Claire. It's all about a game. It's a game, the transfer window. It is a big, big game. And that's why when it comes to deadline day, there is more of a desperation for clubs to do the business because they haven't got the deals that they want to get done. They haven't moved the players on for the prices they thought they could get. So things happen really, really quickly on deadline day. But all of that is just games, negotiations, games. Players' opportunities open up on deadline day when they didn't expect to be there. Teams can try and take advantage of opportunities and exploit weaknesses. Perhaps an injury has happened, of course, in the season, and now a team is desperate to sign a player before the window closes. So, yeah, it's just the nature of the window. It's the nature of deadline day and the fact that deadline exists that speeds and accelerates everything up and makes people and teams and sporting directors and managers and players more desperate to do business. Tizer says, I went through the squad and even taking out Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, Jesus was still stacked for a match day. 11 and 9 subs doesn't leave room for the 5 incomings you've hoped for or any youngsters on the bench. It's just part and parcel of the squad, though. It's just the way that it goes. Like, players will get injured. Players will have to be left out on a match day. Youngsters will have to be part of the under-21 squad at times. Players will be left on the sidelines. Jesus, Tommy, and Zinchenko. I mean, Tommy and Jesus are out until the end of the year. We've got a lot of players, but we need to move players on. There's going to be players that are leaving. Reece Nelson's going to leave. Fabio Vieira, we expect to leave. Lokonga, of course, going to leave. Tavares' exit is expected to be confirmed. Tierney has already gone. Jorginho has gone. Zinchenko could, of course, also leave the club during this upcoming window. If we have a look, I mean, one of Martinelli or Trossard could go. Sterling's not here anymore. So for that reason, there is still this expectation, of course, that yes, we've got depth, but it's about improving that depth in the squad and knowing that injuries will happen. Mikey says, Tom, the problem is that once again in the summer transfer window, we're already seeing teams around us make moves whilst we stay idle. I mean, this isn't true, Mikey, obviously. You know, this idea that we're idle is not true. I know that it's what some people will tell you. I know it's what some people will fool you into believing. And only so much of that can be put on then. You've got to look internally at yourself sometimes and think how gullible you are to believe these things. If you honestly believe that Arsenal are sitting there idle and doing nothing, sitting on their hands until July, I'm sorry, but I don't know what to tell you. No amount of intelligent explanation is going to make you convinced of the alternative view that that's not happening. I know for a fact it's not happening. And I think we know, of course, by just reading reports around what Arsenal are doing in terms of midfielders and forwards and goalkeepers, defenders, etc. And if you read David Ornstein and James McNicholas' report yesterday, of course, you know that's not true. But we still get comments like this from Mikey suggesting that Arsenal are sitting on their hands. Arsenal aren't doing anything. And that other teams are working and we're not working. This isn't true, but people choose to believe it. I don't know why. And I know there are a lot of content creators out there that want to fool you into believing that's really real. But it's just not the case. Gary says, why isn't journalism to be the closest thing to the truth as you can get, but nowadays is the furthest thing from the truth that you can get, and stories are plucked out of the air in a world that we need facts? Because unfortunately, the way in which business is that it's about engagement. Engagement is what drives media these days. And unfortunately, when you've got the ability to make money off of the most volatile, the most clickbaity, the most engaging stuff in the world, it lends itself to an environment where one person putting one right bit of information out during a window might be a great scoop, might be a great moment, but that story is not going to do enough on its own. So there needs to be, I mean, look at the frequency of which some put content out. You know, the frequency that you see in a single day tweets about players that are of no update at all whatsoever. It's pretty much the same. That engagement farms finances, you know. So unfortunately there is. And there's also this horrible pressure of being first to something, being first to a story, first to something breaking, first to something that in the end doesn't turn out to be too accurate. And you get into scenarios where players are coming out and saying, this isn't correct, this is wrong. You get into scenarios where, I remember that, was it Secret Scout, I think it was, in the January window, broke the news about Arsenal and Ollie Watkins, but really made a significant error about the price tag. They broke the story, great scoop on Arsenal and Watkins, that was correct, that Arsenal were in talks over a potential deal for Watkins, but obviously the details of that deal were incorrect when it came out. It wasn't 60 million. The offer from Arsenal was 40 plus add-ons, and it was Villa that approached Arsenal, of course. And these details, of course, when you've got this bit of information, I felt it. I felt this. I felt it when I broke the news about the fact that Arsenal are releasing their new kit, and we're going to be wearing it on the first game or the last home game of the season, and they're going to be releasing it on Thursday as I broke it to you. I felt that pressure. You feel that pressure to get that information out there. You get a little bit of a tip off, you do a little bit more digging, you get a little bit more information about the story to flesh it out some more. And you want to get that information out there because all you're thinking is someone else could have this at the same time as you. And if they put it out before you, it's a nightmare. You've done a lot of work to get a story. You want to get it out there. You want to get the credit for it. You want to be, because this is a business where obviously loads of people have loads of contacts, loads of information, you know. So it's way better to be right than first, you know. And it's happened. There's been times where we've had information. I've got a little tip off, and I'm like, I need to get this double checked, triple checked, and I haven't been able to get it triple checked in time. And then someone's broken that story, and it's come out, and you're like, if only I'd, you know, jumped on that story. But imagine if I had have done and that had been wrong. It hits your reputation, it hits your credibility, and you have to be so careful in this world. And there's a pressure, of course, there's a pressure as well from your employer, I guess, to sometimes have stories, have information, to get that out there, to be first, to bring in that engagement. So yeah, I think that's Gary kind of, unfortunately, the way that media has gone. And the other part is that the other part of engagement is that it's about a lot about rage baiting and saying angry things and saying things that are going to promote a response, a reaction that are going to annoy people. That's the other thing that, of course, has happened really with media in modern days, particularly in video formats as well, but to a degree in print also. JB says, how can you not know why? Like, we don't see movement all around us yet. We haven't even sealed a deal that was apparently done back in January off the back of no other active. Well, I have explained this, JB. If you want to rewind and listen, feel free. We've explained it. It's very much out there. There's plenty of people that have been reporting this information regarding Zubimendi, that the deal is effectively sealed and that a confirmation is expected in July because obviously of the accounting reasons for that. So it's really quite a simple one. And the idea that we have no other activity since January again is incorrect. It's wrong. We know it's incorrect. We know it's wrong because we know Arsenal are in talks with a number of different profiles. Some are public, some are private. We know about some, we don't know about others. And that's just because the transfer window in terms of reporting is, as I always describe to you, it's an iceberg. We see the little bit on the surface, but underneath that is a world that we don't see, don't know about, and find out at points, absolutely out of nowhere. The Kai Havertz deal came absolutely out of nowhere. The Calafiori deal really didn't happen and wasn't known to us until, a few weeks before. The Fabio Vieira deal came out days before we signed him. Jakub Kivior came out days before we signed him, as did Leandro Trossard when we pivoted from Mudryk. This idea that you will hear about what Arsenal are doing for every deal they're involved in, sometimes weeks or months in advance. The Zubimendi situation is, for example, is a real rarity. It's a real rarity. TG says, never trust a reporter if he says off the record. I mean, off the record is what it is. Off the record is something like you'll be talking to a contact of yours, a source of yours, and they'll say this is off the record. That's not for reporting. Sometimes it can give you guidance on a broader story, but the specific information that you might get that is off the record, which I've been in conversations in rooms and discussions with people where the whole conversation is off the record. That's not for reporting. That's just to guide your reporting in some way. Sometimes that's just to build just a network, to build a rapport sometimes, So it's off. If there's someone reports something that says this is off the record, that's an open admission, of course, that they've broken kind of a pact in some ways with the person that they were talking to. It's like saying, just if you're having a heart-to-heart with somebody and you say the words, this stays between me and you. Right? It's like breaking that if you break an off-the-record conversation. Tizer says, am I right in saying that even if clubs want the deal to go through on the 1st of July, all paperwork, medical and announcements can take place before? I mean, yes and no. Sometimes you could effectively do that if you have like a written agreement or a verbal agreement, I guess. But I'm not 100% sure if every single scenario would. So some clubs may, or some players may hold off. Lynn says, I go back to when Arteta came out and said that upstairs have a lot to do, and I read into what it was worth. Arteta saying, we don't come back to me if we don't get what we want. And that's the words are used when he started saying about, I'm going to insist on it. Those types of words. That's really, really key. Ash says, can you please provide the last credible link of Semenyo to Arsenal? I saw a few months ago that was reliable. Sesko and Semenyo was my top striker and winger. I can't say I've heard Semenyo's name mentioned too much in circles lately. There's a report here from 3 weeks ago. The Independent suggests that 25-year-old is still someone who Arsenal could have a look into. The report was by Miguel Delaney, who's got plenty of really strong contacts. So I guess you could look at that report and say that he could be, but I think it's more of an exploratory opinion type thing, isn't it? That Arsenal could go in for Semenyo. Says here, the most fanciful signing would be explosive left-sided forward, but the club are now aware that they badly need to match Bukayo Saka's productivity on the other flank. They've become lopsided. The Athletic Club's Nico Williams, who has a buyout clause thought to be in the region of 50 million, is the ideal option, but his wages would be higher. In contrast to a higher fee but lower wages, Bournemouth's Anton Semenyo. Arsenal also like Brian Mbeumo, but he would have to be retained and moved on to the left, retrained on the left. So there's a mention of Semenyo there, but it's more kind of, I think, a prospective kind of idea of a signing rather than a player that Arsenal are really moving toward. And it says, Tom, sorry, but what is going on with players who are coming back from loan deals? How quick can we ship them off the wage books and search for a left-hand side winger looking slim? Looking slim. It's the 4th of June. It's mad to me. It's honestly mad to me. It's like people choose to wake up and think, you know what, today I'm going to be really pessimistic about Arsenal. It's looking slim. It's the 4th of June. I'm going to be saying this for the next 26 plus 7 days at least. If Arsenal bring in anybody before they start pre-season training, before they start their tour on the 19th of July, they have done work early. If you bring players in before your pre-season tour starts, even better, your pre-season training starts, you have done your deals early. I don't know how many times I have to say this. And the idea that 4 days into the window, there's suggestions that it's looking slim. I am staggered that people choose to be this miserable and this upset this early on. I don't know what you're watching. I don't know who has poisoned your mind to make you this paranoid about a transfer window. All you need to do is go back to 2023 to have seen Arsenal sign Havertz and Timber and Declan Rice before we fly off to our trip 2 years ago. And for those of you that are looking at the last summer window and going, well, Calafiori and Marino came in late, and they did, and last window was not good. Well, I've got some great news for you. The guy that led the recruitment in that window, not here. I've got more great news for you. The guy that was in charge of the January window, not here. Arsenal have brought in a veteran of a sporting director. Why don't you kind of let him cook? Why not let him cook and let him see what he's going to do before you start throwing your toys at the pram on the 4th of June? It's just an idea. It's just a suggestion. You don't have to take it. You can ignore it. You can go mad, but I will call you out for it. I find it absolutely baffling. Absolutely baffling. Nahum says, ha 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 ha. They're glazing us. Big summer. We start early. Blah 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 blah. Same old Arsenal. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens instead of like whipping up a storm a few days into the window opening. Akubra says, what's your view on Barcola versus Doué? Which one do you think? Oh, Doué is the better player, but he's never leaving PSG. It's just not leaving. Why would they sell him? Made absolutely no sense. D123 says, if we sold Tierney, Zinchenko, and the rest of the players on loan, except, I mean, Tierney's gone. He's not going to be sold, obviously. Would we be able to afford Semenyo with a left winger or a centre forward? I mean, if you sign Semenyo, he is the left winger. You're not going to sign another left winger on top of Semenyo. But I think if Arsenal were to sell Fabio Vieira, Zinchenko, Reece Nelson, Lokonga, bring in some money, I don't see why they couldn't add an attacking midfielder to obviously the ones that we are looking at, like a left winger, a centre forward, a midfielder, a defender, a backup goalkeeper. I don't see why that would be so challenging. I don't know why it would be so challenging whatsoever. Abilio says, I know Partey has a bad injury record, but it feels like we have left his renewal really late, considering his performance in the season, all other business we need to do. Sometimes talks just happen later. Sometimes the player is not interested in having talks. Sometimes the representatives aren't interested in having talks until late. Maybe talks have been going on for a long time and are just a slower process. Maybe they wanted to see until the end of the window what other offers they would get before making a decision on their future. Wait to see what offers came in from other clubs. The power's in the player's hands, not Arsenal's hands. You know, he has to agree to the offers that Arsenal put in, but all the power is in the player's hands in this front. A man says, Tom, I'm from America, and I don't know what it is, but I've always gravitated towards Arsenal. Is that fair, or should there be a deeper route to a fan to be a club? No. You choose the club that you want to support. You know, you don't have to have a deeper route. My route is through inheriting Arsenal as a club. Obviously, the way in which you choose the club that you support can have an impact upon how you view or how you judge them. And that then changes the context around certain conversations. We've had conversations, of course, about how people choose Arsenal from a glory hunting perspective, because when they chose Arsenal, they were winning loads of trophies. They were winning every single week. They were winning matches hand over fist. And the person who's chosen to be the club picked them because of that reason. And so therefore, when they look at Arsenal's record in terms of recent years, they obviously might have a very different way of viewing the club as opposed to you. And for that reason, I don't tend to have too much kind of sympathy for that kind of viewpoint, if that's the reason you've chosen to be a fan. At the same time, you may have chosen to be an Arsenal fan because they were winning loads, but then are more tempered in how you look and you consider the context. But no, man, if you've been drawn to Arsenal for whatever reason, and wherever you are in the world, you're entitled to choose who you want to support, mate. So feel free to choose Arsenal as your team. You can choose who you would like to support. It says, Tom, you misunderstand when I say slim. I mean, Rodrigo and Nico Williams were the top two targets, and they look like they might be staying. And to be honest, like if that's the case, and if that's the case that both of them are staying, Arsenal will have alternatives. Arsenal will have other players. As I try and tell you every week, the transfer window is an iceberg. You see what's above the surface. You're unaware of what the rest is. And if you build your whole view on just what you can see, then you are going to be left with a vast chasm of knowledge that you don't have, that you are ignoring. And you can't do that. You can't just go solely on what is there and what is being talked about and what is being reported, because what is being reported is a small percentage of the reality. And that's just what the transfer window is. Gary says, Tom, why is there so much pressure on Arteta, but literally none of the owners who, in my opinion, haven't backed him to what I think? He's the guy that's at the front. He's the facing individual of the club. He's the guy that speaks to the media. He's the guy that picks the team. He's the guy that asks the questions. He's the guy that can be changed most easily, that people feel will have the most impact. So that's why the pressure is on him. I agree with you. Last season, it was about recruitment. It was about the people making the decisions above Arteta. I think Arteta did the best possible job that any manager would have done in his position in that season. I don't see how anyone could have got more. And we know that because of what happened to teams like Spurs and Man United further down the table. Man City are another really good example as well. That didn't finish as high as Arsenal. That didn't go as far as Arsenal in the likes of the Champions League, despite not having anywhere close to the same number of injuries as what Arsenal had, or the same number of issues as Arsenal had. So for me, last season's on them. And as I've mentioned before, I talked about this on TalkSport yesterday. From a fan perspective, I want Arsenal to be in a position where at the end of this window, I can only point to Arteta if things don't succeed next season. That's what I want. I want to be in a position where Arteta is the only factor in Arsenal's failure if it happens next season. And to do that, we need to have a 9 out of 10 window. To do that, we need to make sure that we have backed the guy. Because if we back the guy and we've still failed, then there's uncomfortable conversations to be had. Obviously, we have to see what happens to lead us to that point. But it's very difficult to look anywhere else other than the manager, of course, when you've backed the guy, you've brought in the players they want, you've brought in all the positions, you've strengthened across the team, and it doesn't work out, then there's conversations, of course, to be had at that point. Cole says, might be unpopular, but I don't think our owners don't back the manager. They are fairly good owners. I agree in the sense that I think they will back him this summer. I certainly sense that we're going to be in for a big summer. People are expecting that all to be done by June 4th. I get it. But it's going to take time, of course, for those deals to be done. And Asimov says, "Hey Tom, long time, more of a personal one, but I see that you're taking a break for a bit, and good on you. But I wanted to ask what you put your dedication and discipline with work down to." There's positives and negatives to this. The negative side is the control freak aspect of me, the obsessive compulsive aspect to me. That makes it much easier to do, but they're not particularly positive things. The obsessive side of it, absolutely. The other side is that I love this community. I love doing this job. I love doing this channel. I get up most days excited to do the show, to hear from our listeners, to answer questions. Some days it's not great. We would have lost a game. A transfer would have fallen apart. We would have got some bad news. Some days it's harder to do the show. But if I weren't doing it when it was bad, there'd be no point doing it when it was good. It wouldn't be genuine. It wouldn't be legitimate. So yeah, it's a number of things, both positive and self-reflecting negatives as well. Absolutely. Aoife says, "Oh God, some of our fans are unbearable. Do you not have productive things to do besides panicking 4 days into a 90-day window?" Eminem says, "Morning, Tom. What's your view on Tomiyasu's situation? I don't get it. Well, I mean, he's injured until the end of the year. He's recovering from knee surgery, and that's the reality. But we need to make sure that we brought a player in this window that can cover multiple defensive positions, because he is not going to be here. And neither is Zinchenko, neither is Tierney. I don't think. At least I don't think Zinchenko will be here. So we need to make sure that we deal with that." King says, "What qualifies as a 9 out of 10 window? Centre forwards, wide forwards, midfielder, Zubimendi, defender, versatile, and a backup goalkeeper. That's a 9 out of 10 window for me. A 10 out of 10 window is if you add on top of that the attacking midfielder, extra depth of talent in the forward line and attacking midfield. That would make it a perfect window for me. That's what I think we need. Obviously, if a player leaves, like a Trossard or a Martinelli, that changes it. If Martinelli or Trossard leaves and we add the 5 I mentioned before, and we don't add a 6th, that would drop down to an 8, I feel. So I feel we have to make sure that we add more than we just replace. I think that answers Sue's question as well. Mikey says, "How have Liverpool managed to secure Frimpong, Gyokeres and Wirtz after winning the title all before July 7th? We can't even announce a signing due to January until July. Why are we so different?" I mean, they've secured Frimpong. The Gyokeres deal is ongoing. The Wirtz deal is ongoing. One of those 3 has signed. And that's what I find interesting, Mikey, as well. The psychological element of that. Because if you read the reports around Zubimendi and you compare that to Gyokeres and Wirtz, Zubimendi, of course, is more wrapped up than those. But you see here, we can't even announce a signing done in January. Like, can you see the context? Can you see the mindset of kind of that comment, how it's written? That's how a lot of Arsenal fans view rival clubs right now. They're kind of viewing it with these glasses on that kind of showcase any potential deals they're being talked about as being done. Like the Brian and Mbeumo stuff with Man United. I've seen Arsenal fans say, Man United have already signed him. They haven't. It's in the works. It looks positive. The same way that Zubimendi is in the works with Arsenal, but they're spoken about differently. It is interesting. It's a good psychological kind of assessment of how people and how Arsenal fans in particular view different businesses, even though they're very similar in different ways. Akubra says, "Saka needs pressure for his position. He's too comfortable, in my opinion. No one should be an automatic name in the starting 11 except for Wright." Well, I think obviously that when Harry is definitely a factor there. If we bring in another wide forward and keep Martinelli, he obviously is another option for those positions. I don't think Saka is going to be comfortable, but I also think that your best players play. So Saka will just continue to play as long as he is fit. Spearmint says, "Tom, when you are in Vancouver, are you willing to do a meet-up? I know a great Arsenal pub." My missus is a very strict itinerary, I'm afraid, mate. And I am being basically, I'm given the tour of Canada in my trip. But we have a very, very strict itinerary indeed. That I am not the one who's drawn that up, but we are sticking to that, I'm afraid. So it's a very, very unlikely. In a wacky world, maybe it'll just happen. But I can't promise anything because the missus has got a very, very strict list of timings and days, and we're moving around all over. We're not really in Vancouver, to be honest. We're mainly on Vancouver Island, so we're not even really going to be in the city at all. Lucas says, I'm quite lucky that I'm a carp fisherman. So in the summer, I take myself away from the footy, and it's a lovely break, even though I've supported Arsenal for 28 years. That is lucky for you. Lucky for you, Lucas. Absolutely, mate. Clem says, do you think that... Clem, why does the name Clem ring a bell? I'm thinking of something from Fallout 4. I feel like I'm getting flashbacks from someone in Fallout now. Do you think we should get a right winger for a backup to Saka and have Waneri as the backup to Odegaard? I like Waneri on the right. I think Waneri's got a lot to offer on the right. I think obviously he's a different style of player to Saka. It's difficult to sign a right winger because whoever you sign, or at least try to sign, knows that Saka is the starter. That's why whenever we discuss Bryan Mbeumo, it was very, very difficult to kind of justify a deal for Bryan Mbeumo, justify the idea of him coming to Arsenal, because why would he come to Arsenal knowing that Saka is going to be starting pretty much every single game? It's very difficult. Richard says, Tom, are you going to be going phone off on your break or keeping an eye on things? A bit of both. It's impossible to not look at my phone while the transfer window's on. It's impossible to not 100% switch off, especially if something big drops down. But I will be keeping my phone in my pocket and turning notifications off for large portions of the day. That is definitely for sure. I or the T says, at what point does sticking to the system become stubbornness? Because strikers like Henry, Aguero, Suarez, Aubameyang wouldn't fit our system in terms of height, hold-up play and headers. The system isn't rigid under Arteta. It got quite rigid this season because of the injuries, and we had to adapt to that, and we played quite rigidly because of who we were missing and who wasn't performing. But if you look at how we played in 23-24, and we broke those goal-scoring records and we broke those win records, that was a very fluid system. It was a very open system. It was a very malleable way of playing. And I imagine with the players returning from fitness, getting back into form, and the additions that we make in the summer, that same system will be fluid and open more so once again. But it just wasn't this season because of obviously all of the factors that were they're external to us, obviously. TG says there is a lot of things happening when doing transfers, other countries, FAs, time differences, contracts, agents, clubs, players, etc. Absolutely. Lai says, I don't understand why our fans are so punitive-minded. Everything feels personal. This person is too comfortable. That person should be fired. The same already complaining about Berta. What's this? I absolutely know what you mean. Facer says, what if we get a 9 out of 10 window but have the same injuries as last season and then fail? Where is the conversation then? I think if we have the same injuries as last season but we've had a 9 out of 10 window, we shouldn't fail in the same way. I don't think we should be having as bad of a season at all. We should be reaching finals still. We should be being closer to the title winner in that case. So as I said, it all depends upon where the season ends, where we are, what's happened. But the idea is that the same injuries shouldn't happen if you recruit more effectively, because things don't snowball. Players aren't forced to play through problems. Players aren't exposed to more minutes than they should be. So having a 9 out of 10 window theoretically means that you shouldn't have the same number of 27 injuries that we suffered last season, because you are better prepared for the season. So that's the whole idea of it. And it says, Waneri should certainly be able to cover both him and by having decent minutes that keep him happy and improve his development. It's just a bit harder, but learning the position at the elite level is also hard. Oscar says, are you worried about the lack of links to us and left wingers and how slow we are to progress with signings? No, I'm not. I think we've kind of covered that, Oscar, in quite a lot of detail. Gunnar says, Saka, Martinelli, Trossard hardly crossed the ball, which means that Sesko will be as useful as Havertz pretty much. I mean, that's not true, is it? We crossed the ball the blooming time. Lee says, Tom, tell all fans not to believe any incomings until they're stroking Win the dog and putting gel in Arteta's hair. I mean, it's a good way to go about transfers, but it also means that you'll find yourself being pretty speculative about everything up until the point in which we obviously sign those players. Tyser says, for me, other than forward, we really need to sort out the left side, either someone to link up with Trossard and Martinelli or a new left-sided winger. We need to stop being predictable on the right. I think that's probably fair. Eminem says, do you think Kivior will go? I think it's 50-50. I think there's a lot of interest in Kivior, particularly from Germany and Italy. I hope he doesn't. I think we've got a really good depth defensive option in Kivior. I think he's been very good. But you could argue that his value has never been higher. And if there is a time to cash in on him, now is that time. So I think they will absolutely wait and see until, they'll see what indeed happens this window. And what offers they might get. Kieran says, we often talk about recruitment with Berta, but do you think he will drastically improve our sales? Needs to be better. And I see City selling players like Yan Couto for 30 million with envy. I hope so. He sold a lot of players from Atletico Madrid for very good fees. So I'm hoping that that is indeed the case here as well. Gary says, how is Arteta to blame for injuries? Players get injured. We didn't have options because the owners didn't give us enough money to cover and all we needed in the summer. And Arteta kept saying that we were short. This is a sentiment that I agree with. Tipsy says Saka is one of the best deliveries in the world football. Is that guy sick? That's what I mean. I don't really get the comment about we don't cross enough. Saka is one of the best crossers and creative players in the division. Carl says, do you think reaching finals is a measure for success? I find it a bit strange when they say second is a failure. I think obviously it's subjective, isn't it? It shows you that progress. If you didn't reach finals previously, you're reaching finals now. Thierry Henry spoke about it. I think that was some of the more fair criticism that he had of the team in that overlap interview. So do I think it's a measure for success? I think it's subjective. I don't subscribe to the binary trophy success, everything else failure. We've talked about that a lot, but I think it's certainly more about subjective kind of looking at. Ian says, Tom, you're too passive, mate. I don't know what you mean, mate. Mikey says, don't mean to be negative, Nelly, but Reinders has now gone to City. Here we go from Fab. Honestly, I know it's June 4th, but why are we so Mikey, you need to chill, bro. You need to chill out. Ken says, I'm sure if we get either Sesko or Gyokeres, they would both do a banging job for us. I hope for Sesko, he can smash it for us in the next 10 years. I agree. I'm hoping that we get Sesko as well. King says, what market would you like to see Arsenal entertain more in terms of transfers? I don't think it's a case of what market. I just want to see Arsenal shop in the elite market. I want to see him bring in top players, some of the best young players in the world. That's what I want to see Arsenal doing, is bring in the players that are the difficult players to sign and succeed. And we've started to do that. Declan Rice is a fantastic example of that exact type of deal. But at the same time, you can sign young players like Jury and Timber who have an immediate impact in your squad when he's not having a knee surgery injury, of course. S says, you told us to chill last year too? Of course, because the same people were saying on the 4th of June that they were going mad. And the year before that, they watched Arsenal do all their business before pre-season. So that's why I'm telling you to chill. That's why I'm telling you to calm down. So you're also not entitled to anything. It's also worth pointing that out as well. Lass says, is the hierarchy too big in Arsenal since these transfers in Arsenal seem to take forever and they're dragging out? I think we need to bring that into today's show. I can't repeat the same silly questions over and over again. I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day. Enjoy yourselves. Try and stay calm as you can. I know I'm probably speaking to trying to get blood from a stone here with some. I really get that. But when it comes, of course, to Arsenal and transfers, I know people just cannot seem to be objective and reasonable. But I know the majority of you are, and I know it's a loud minority, of course, and I know there are a lot of people out there that are sadly poisoning people's views of this and making them panic and making them worry, and that's because obviously it's content. But I'm not going to fall into that trap. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to try and make you panic. I'm not going to try and make you keep tuning in regularly and desperately have to listen to the angry rage baiting that you see. I'm not going to do that to you. I'm going to say it how it is, which is the honest truth of what it is, and that's that people are going way too mad, way too soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, respectful, and as always, up the Arsenal.